Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. We have a bunch more cards to talk about today, so let's get into it. First up, we're going to talk about Warriors sets so far. They have a set of Riff cards announced earlier today, or yesterday rather. Verse Riff is a 2-mana spell. Give your hero +2 attack this turn, gain 2 armor, and it has Finale. Play your last Riff. Now, how this works is, if you've already played one of these 3 riffs and you finale one of the other riffs, it's going to replay the one you previously played. So for instance, say you play Verse Riff on 2, it's only going to give you +2 attack and 2 armor if it's the first one you play. But if you follow that up with a Chorus Riff, that's going to do this effect: draw a minion, give it +2/+2, and it's also going to replay the Verse Riff, so you'll get +2 attack and gain 2 armor as well. Now, what this won't do, it won't chain. So, for example, if you've played a game where you've played loads of riffs, and then you play the Bridge Riff finale'd, let's say it replays your Chorus Riff, the Chorus Riff is not going to hit the finale effect again and then suddenly play the Verse Riff as well. You're only going to get the previous one at max, so no crazy chains happening with these ones. How strong are these cards? Well, initially they're very bad. This is the first one that you can play immediately. This is +2 attack, gain 2 armor. And if that looks weak, you can compare it to a card from Classic that Druid had in Claw. This is back in 2014. This is 1 mana, give your hero +2 attack this turn, gain 2 armor. Yeah, so 2 mana for that effect is terrible, so you've got to really make use of the finale for this. They're kind of like relics, I suppose, these cards, in that the more you play of them, the better they get. But they don't really scale upwards. They just give you a little bonus on the previous one you've played. So they don't really scale as hard as relics at all. And the forms seem quite weak, like Chorus Riff. Draw a minion, give it +2/+2. That's kind of similar to a card that Paladin had once upon a time, way back in Rise of Shadows, called Call to Adventure, which was draw the lowest cost minion from your deck and give it +2/+2. So this one even kind of tutored for you, which is arguably a little bit stronger than this effect. Granted, this one's not massively overcosted compared to the previous one, but you can even compare this card, draw a minion, give it +2/+2, to a card that Hunter used to have, which was kind of decent. Scavenger's Ingenuity. This is actually, for most of this life cycle, it was 2 mana, draw a beast, give it +2/+2. And it was a pretty decent card. It was very, very strong at +3/+3, but that got nerfed kind of quickly. And, I mean, they could have made this 2 mana, maybe. Maybe it'd be a bit too strong, particularly with the finale effect, but at 3, it's a bit meh. And another thing with these Riff cards, like, you do want to ramp them up and start playing them so the other ones have the benefits as well. But these kind of effects aren't really cards you love playing early on in the game. Like, give your hero +2 attack and gain 2 armor. You only really want to play that if you can actually kill a minion with it on turn 2, and that's not always going to be the case. And for instance, this one, you'd rather do a proactive play a lot of the time than 3 mana, draw a minion, give it +2/+2. Like, you can compare this to like Bannerman in Paladin, which was a decent turn 3 play, but that game came with a body and it buffed your entire hand, and even that sometimes was a little bit slow. So you can imagine this thing being mega slow in that you don't even get a body with it, and the minion you draw might not necessarily fill out your curve. Then we have the last one, the Bridge Riff. Summon a 3/4 rocker with Taunt and a 4/3 with Rush for 6 mana. It's like okay stat line. It's not really a great 6 mana play. I mean, if it plays your last Riff, how impactful is it really that you get an extra draw or an extra +2 attack and a little bit of armor? It's like, sometimes useful. It's kind of nice replaying the bridge riff itself, so you can do this one and then repeat it. But I'm very unimpressed with these. These kind of remind me of relics when they first came out, when Relic of Extinction cost 2 mana, when the Vault cost 3 mana, and it all just looked very, very weak. And it was very weak. This is kind of giving me similar vibes, but it feels like it's probably even weaker. Yeah, poor warrior. Like this one, I feel like should definitely be 1 mana. This one, putting it to 2 might be a bit too much, but maybe this one could be to 5. I'm not sure. But in the current form, I don't know. It looks just a bit too weak to be a valid support package for the archetype. I've heard some people say like, oh, maybe they'll get a legendary that plays all your riffs and stuff as well, but I doubt it. They tend to like reveal packages all together, so if there was a legendary riff card to go with this, it probably would have been revealed in the same video as these ones were. They tend not to split them up nowadays, so when there's some synergy, that what you see is what you get. Alright, we've got one more card for this is Blackrock and Roll, the legendary spell. It's a fire spell, 5 mana, give all minions in your deck attack and health equal to their cost. So to be clear what this does, it adds the attack and health to the original stats, it won't replace it. So you don't worry like your 5-drop's not going to be a 5/5, it's going to be whatever it was before, +5/+5. So a little bit stronger than what I initially thought, at least when I saw the card. A lot of hate towards this card. I don't think it's too bad. There's potentially quite a lot of stats, particularly if you're playing any like big minions that get discounted. And there's some quite nice ones you can combo with this in Warrior in general. So a card that works well is Last Stand. Draw a taunt minion, manifest 7, double its stats. This is like probably one of the best ways to work with it. Could even consider this to be the card that you want. So this is a 6 mana 3/8. Taunt backcry if you have 5 or more armor, so I'm going to copy this. This one's already good to double, but imagine you've given it +6/+6 already. It's going to be a 9/14, and then you double that. It's going to be 18/28. And then you get 2 of them. That's pretty good. That's pretty darn good. If the deck doesn't have silence or hard removal, they can't do anything about that. So even though this is like a do nothing for 5 mana, it might make your future plays just like completely insane. There's also some other minions that are kind of decent. We don't know what the core set looks like now, but if Grom is in it, this is a pretty good one. +8/+8 onto Grom. Very, very nice. Does a lot of face damage. You can even combo with Lorframar if you want to get really, really greedy. This doubles the stats, kind of like the 1 mana spell. This does it to every minion. So if you play the 5 mana spell into this, then suddenly your things are very, very big. That's a little bit slow to get going, so not going to work in most matchups, but against very, very slow decks, this sort of win con is going to be something they can't really deal with. A couple of other minions that might be decent. Remornia, very good one. And Trench Stalker, also very good one. Generally like more expensive minions. There's some crazy ones you can get, like the Giants. Naga Giant's here to stay. For instance, this is 20 minion that gets cheaper with spells anyway, so in theory you could have a 0 mana 28/28 if you've played this 5 mana spell. So I don't know, I don't think it's too bad. It is a do nothing, but Warrior sometimes is okay with doing nothing, particularly if they have very good control tools, because they have tempo resets, so you can take a really slow turn as long as you can catch up. It's really bad for a deck like aggressive Paladin to take a really, really slow turn because they just don't have those catch-up methods, but for Warrior they might have them. So you'll be perfectly fine playing a slow card like this if it just leads you to winning the game. Maybe something like Luna's Pocket Galaxy you can compare it to potentially, although probably not as strong since it's just helping the stats and not really discounting the mana. But yeah, I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic for this card to see a bit of play, depending on what the rest of Warrior's set looks like and what their core set looks like. There's also potential for Warrior to have other win cons where this maybe wouldn't make the cut, but I think it's showing some promise. I'll say that. Okay, we haven't got any new Warlock cards for now. There is a Shaman legendary spell, Jive Insect. 5 mana, transform a minion into Rag the Fire Lord. Overload 2 and it's fire. This is a pretty cool spell. Pretty much like a massive buff. You could call it like Power Word of Authority is kind of a good comparison, I suppose, for this card. Which was a card not too long ago in Paladin. Or Blessing of Authority, sorry, not Power Word. So there's like +8, +8. It can't attack heroes this turn. Kind of similar. But you want to use it on tokens rather than big minions. This spell works very nicely with Carving Chisel, since on turn 5 if you've got no board you can just swing with the chisel and then turn a totem into Ragnar. It's pretty nice. Kind of similar to what Evolved Shaman was doing with Vol'jin and Glug / Neptulon. Pretty similar to that. Probably a little bit less powerful though. I mean, definitely less powerful. Getting 1 Ragnaros compared to getting Neptulon and a 3/6 is definitely worse, but you don't need to have the deck building restraints that you do for the Vol'jin combo. Other applications for this, maybe you could copy the rags for a win con. Criminal lineup on the rag. 4 rags, quite a lot of damage. If there's no board, it's just lethal. Pretty strong, and you can achieve this using some of the cards that Shaman got in the rest of the set, namely the Jazz Base. Your next spell costs 1 less, overload, while equipped to improve. So maybe you can either make the Jive Insect cost 0, or you can make the criminal lineup a lot cheaper, so you can actually play both on the same turn, potentially, if you have set it up for long enough. No, there's something there, maybe. I think it's generally just like a decent spell. The Overload 2 is quite a lot. So your next turn is definitely going to be hurt quite a bit. Like Command of Neptulon already is unplayable on some turns in Shaman just because Overload 1 and this is Overload 2. So you can see this being a bit worse. Other applications for this, Rathspine Enchanter. This casts a copy of a fire spell, so if this is your only fire spell in hand, you could turn something into this. Although this doesn't say friendly minions, so if your opponent has a board, you might just be giving them a rag. So don't think this is going to be the crazy support for Rathspine Enchanter that we're all hoping for, sadly. Okay, next we've got some Paladin minions. Big minions for Paladin. Kangor Dancing King is the 5 mana 3/3. Lifesteal, Death Rattle, swap this with a minion from your hand and give it Lifesteal. So there's a way to like tutor out big minions basically from your hand, kind of similar to Vol'jin in how it works, but this is a Death Rattle, it's not immediately, and you don't need a minion on board to do it. And you get the thing back to hand and give the thing Lifesteal. So maybe good if you've got a lot of big minions. I mean, it's still a little bit slow to get going, but at least it's got Lifesteal and gives the other thing Lifesteal, so you kind of recover from taking slow turns in a way to keep you alive. We have Annoya Troop, which is a 9 mana 3/6 mech. Taunt, Divine Shield, Death Rattle, summon 3 1/2 mechs with Taunt and Divine Shield. This is a Void Lord on steroids. This thing is like kind of impossible to get through if you're purely doing trade-based gameplay to try and get through it. It's so many trades you need. 2 trades at least, even if you have a 6/6 or better to kill the big minion, and then there's another 6 trades needed for the 1/2 max, so kind of crazy amount. Doesn't have a lot of attack, I guess is a downside. Weak to transform / silence, though there might not be a lot of that in standard. We don't really know. Like Priest is losing its silence effect, for instance, so Shaman has access to a lot of it, but I don't know if a lot of the other classes do, so it might be good still. We have Lead Dancer as well, which is meant to tutor out the Annoyer Troop. There's a 6 mana 4/2 Death Rattle. Summon a minion from your deck with less attack than this minion. So, kind of a good effect if you always get the troop, but there is a downside that you have to put minions in your deck that you actually want to summon from this. You can't do like a standard curve with like a bunch of 1-drops, 2-drops, and 3-drops because it's going to be pulling them out. So compared to something like Possessed Lackey in the past that this kind of set of cards reminds me of, it's quite a bit weaker. Or even Warriors, more recent Cowardly Grunt, 6 mana 6/2, already more attack on the body. Summon a minion from your deck. So this is a 6 mana 4/2. Summon a minion in your deck with less attack than this minion. So you can't actually cheat out absolute big boys with this anyway, that you could with the Warrior. I mean, it does maybe free you up to play minions with 4 or more attack in your deck and not have an issue, but there's not a whole lot of them early on in the game anyway. So yeah, I don't know, the Lead Dancer doesn't seem too great. As we saw, like, Cowardly Grunt wasn't very good either. Not too impressive that, or the Kangor too much. Kangor seems a little slow. I mean, this, you can kind of compare this one to perhaps Warlock's Slime, and the Slime ends up being pretty decent. The Amorphous Slime, both like 5-drop summon a copy. This one's got lifesteal but fewer attack, and this one requires you only to run big minions for it to be effective. But if you do that, it's probably decent. It's just, I don't know if you really want to do that as a Paladin. You just don't have like the tools that Warlock does to make as much use of it, I don't think. The only thing I do like on this package is maybe Blood Crusader finds a new target. Blood Crusader plus Annoyer Troop sounds very strong actually for decks. There's so much tempo. And it might be a reason to include 2 Blood Crusaders in your deck potentially. And you forget about all the rest of the big package and you just say, I'm going to cheat out this kind of broken 9-drop. And it's going to win me the game a lot of the time. You could even say you want to make use of this if you're too worried about hurting yourself so much. If you've got Divine Shield and you do the Blood Crusader play, you're not going to be taking as much face damage. So maybe there's something there. Next we've got DJ Mana Storm, 10 mana, 8/8 Battlecry, set the cost of spells in your hand to 0. After you cast one, the other ones cost 1 more. This is a bit of a wait and see legendary, I think. I mean, 10 mana for this effect, very, very late in the game. Mage doesn't have currently any way to get to 10 mana to use this, so yeah. And also, it's losing its big spells, the 2 main ones that they've been using for most of the time in Rune of the Archmage. This one's rotating, and so is Drakefire Amulet. So what is the spell you want to get out of this straight away? Well, I think it needs to be something we've not seen yet. And I also feel like 10 mana, even for this effect, even if those 2 big spells were in standard, don't think this is actually that strong. Yeah. Kind of weak for now, but if we see the rest of the Mage set, maybe it will have some support for it somewhere. And we've got some Druid cards as well. Timber Tambourine, 4 mana, 2/3 Death Rattle, summon 1 5/5 Ancient, play cards that cost 5 or more while equipped to improve. Pretty decent overall tempo. It's a bit slow to get going. 3 swings of it, and then you get the effect. But you're going to probably get at least 2 5/5s, you would imagine, in this deck, maybe even 3. if you play this on curve. And that might be a big enough tempo swing when it comes down to be very, very good. Seems like a strong card to me. Druid also got one of the strongest cards from the mini set last time in Rake, which is this card if you don't remember it. And this works pretty nice with the tambourine because you already have that +2 attack from the weapon itself, so Rake's suddenly going to do 4 at a minimum without any other attack buffs, so that's going to start clearing a lot of things very, very nicely. It's going to be a little awkward if you don't have it on curve to fit into some of your turns potentially, because it is so slow to get going. So maybe if it's turn 7 or so and you have the choice between this and a big thing, you're like, well, I would like to get this going, but it's just a bit too slow. Like the payoff doesn't happen for so many turns and I can't afford to lose that sort of tempo. So this kind of just ends up sitting in hand, maybe, if it's not on curve. But on curve it should be pretty strong. Got some support cards for it as well. We have Summer Flower Child, is 5 mana 4/5. Battlecry, draw 2 cards that cost 6 or more. Finale, they cost 1 less. You're not going to be able to get the finale every time with this, but obviously on curve you will. If Nourish stays in standard, maybe you want to go for that first, and then suddenly you're not getting the finale on the turn after, potentially. But maybe you're not going to be running Nourish in this deck, who knows. There's some good candidates for this, namely Underking, pretty good. Topior, pretty good. Like this could be actually a tutor for Topior. And run a bunch of nature spells potentially, depending if they're available. Like you can play this from 5, tutor Topior with it, and immediately play Topior on 6. Pretty nice. Like I said, Underking good, and you can also tutor Crypt Keepers and Anubucans as well. So it goes very, very nicely with the armor package already, because if you're drawing these minions, all of these kind of pair well with each other. So you draw 2 of them. This one you can play immediately on turn 6 because it's going to get that finale discount, and then that's going to allow you to play like Crypt Keeper as well for a discount as well. Like this kind of effect, 5 mana 4/5, draw 2. It's not like too crazy, but getting the finale 2 and the fact that it tutors specific cards makes me think it's going to be quite strong. Kind of reminds me a bit of Prescience in Shaman, where the card looked like decent, but the reality of tutoring specific cards just made it very, very strong, and this might be the same case. 7 mana Drum Circle, choose one, summon 5 2/2 treants, or give your minions +2/+4 and Taunt. This is another big spell. So the first effect, summon 5 2/2 treants for 7 mana. Not very strong. Druid's got currently Scale of Onyxia, which fills your board with 2/1s with Rush, so already summons more minions and they have Rush, and honestly Scale of Onyxia is not completely insane anymore. It's a decent card, but it's kind of been pushed aside a little bit lately, so being replaced with this card doesn't fill me with confidence. The second half, give your minions +2/+4 on Taunt. That one's a little bit more exciting. It can combo nicely with the tambourine. Say you've equipped this on 4, played something on 5, played something on 6, then you swing with it, get like 3 5/5s, and then you can give them +2/+4 and Taunt, and that kind of swings back the tempo and stabilizes you. Potentially very, very good. But in general, it's probably a little slow for tokeny style decks, and tokeny style decks are getting a big hit with the rotation. So I'm not sure on this card. I kind of have a suspicion, let's say, particularly there's another choose one card announced this set, that there might be a card for Druid that says something like, your next choose one has both effects combined, something like that. And then suddenly this play becomes really good. You get 5 2/2s, and then they all get buffed by +2/+4, so you end up with 5 4/6 taunts, which is a really, really nice board state. It might be the legendary minion, I don't know, or it might just be a bit of a pipe dream for me. But I could see something like that entering the game, and then suddenly Drum Circle looks a lot more appealing. But for now, it looks a bit meh. Next, Demon Hunter got some cards. Eye of Shadow, your hero has lifesteal, 2 mana, 2/3 demon. This one pairs nicely with the legendary spell, Going Down Swinging. 5 mana, give your hero +2 attack and immune this turn. So you combo those together, you can kind of get a Blood Boil style effect where you heal yourself up. It's 2 drops like, It's a bit The lifesteal on your hero is kind of nice, but I mean, it's a River Crocodilist otherwise. I don't think this is like that spectacular. Glaive Tar, 4 mana, 4/2 Death Rattle, draw 1 card, play Outcast cards while equipped to improve. This one's pretty nice for mid-rangey Outcast deck. So currently that deck like is kind of forcing a low curve and playing Magnifying Glaive, which is after your hero attacks, draw until you have 3 cards. So they're using kind of this for the value. It's a bit cheaper than this 4 mana card, but it requires you to dump your hand before doing the swing to get full effect out of it. But it can potentially draw a bit more cards. This Glaive Tar, instead, you don't need to like dump your hand. You can actually play a bit more expensive or play a bit more combo-y in the mid game. It seems kind of decent. Like the effect alone, 4/2 draw 1 card, isn't too bad for a sort of mid-rangey aggressive deck. It's a lot of damage on a weapon, and coming with the rotation, we're going to see a lot of the more expensive and weaker Outcast cards going out. Not sure what's coming back in yet, but we're going to see this one rotate, maybe this one goes, so maybe the random effects of Outcast generation and stuff suddenly gets a lot cheaper, and it's going to be a lot easier to juice this up a lot and have it draw you 3-4 cards quite consistently. Next we've got Instrument Smasher. It's a 4 mana 3/6. Whenever your weapon is destroyed, equip a random Demon Hunter weapon. So straight off, this is very similar to a card that Shaman had or has. I'm not actually sure if it's still in standard. You know what is actually still in standard? Sucker Hook. At the end of your turn, transform your weapon into one that costs 1 more. Now this one is kind of decent value, but Shamans don't really care about the weapons as much as Demon Hunters do. And the problem with the Sucker Hook was that often you would not be able to swing your weapon because you have to hold it to enable this. So like maybe when you equip your weapon you want to swing it, and then the next turn you kind of want to swing it again, but you also want to upgrade it with the Sucker Hook, so you can't really do both a lot of the time if you only have 1 charge left. So this felt a bit bad in the end, but the new card doesn't have that problem. You can just swing and you get a new one straight away. You don't get to swing with the new one straight away, but it's pretty good value. And the nice thing about this one is a random Demon Hunter weapon. So whereas Sucker Hook upgraded into one that costs 1 more, this one could potentially upgrade it massively. Say you used one of this 1 mana weapon. I think this one's rotating and this one's also rotating. But say you use this new 1 mana weapon potentially, and then maybe you could get this one, or the new 4 mana one, or this one if it stays in core. Suddenly that's like a pretty big upgrade if you go from this into any of these 3 or 4 cost ones. It's a pretty great value for a 4-drop, I would say. And not that hard to set up if you use that 1 mana weapon before this. So while Sucker Hook wasn't great, this one actually looks quite a bit better. There's some combos you can do with this and Going Down Swinging. I don't know how great a combo it is. It kind of just gives you randomly more attack on your turn into killing minions. It's an expensive combo, so probably not very good, but there's something available there. But kind of interested in trying this card. It looks dangerously close to Sucker Hook, but those little ways which make it a bit better might push it over the edge. Okay, finally we got some banana cards from Hunter. Bunch of bananas, give it a minion +1/+1 for 1 mana. 3 bananas left. if you're confused what this means, it's basically like kind of like twin spell, but you have 3 charges of the spell. So you get this 3 times, which is pretty good value. +1/+1 for 1 mana is not crazy good, but in terms of value, it's pretty decent. There's also Barrel of Monkeys. 2 mana, summon a 1/4 monkey with taunt. 3 monkeys left, so kind of similar spells. This one, 2 mana to summon a 1/4 monkey with taunt. It's going to be a Silverback Patriarch for 2 mana. It's not fantastic, but it's not awful. It's actually kind of a good buff target for the bananas, because 4 health for 2 mana is pretty nice. You can kind of compare this card in a vacuum to Pack Mule, which is not a great card. Encumbered Pack Mule, so when you draw this, add a copy of it to your hand. So there's a couple of differences, namely the stats, but also the fact you have to draw this to get the effect of the second copy. Sometimes if this was in your mulligan, you'd never keep it, or if it ended up there, just because you throw something away and this came back, you'd be pretty sad. Whereas you never have the problem with the Barrel of Monkeys. Barrel Monkeys also get 3 copies rather than 2, which is certainly relevant. And the fact that one's a minion, one's a spell is relevant. So for Hunter, they actually care about beast tag. They don't necessarily want cheap things with their beast because they could potentially go for some recruit synergy with a Shaman Saber, which is staying in standard. Summon a beast from your deck, so this is a spell that you can play without ruining a Shaman Saber, which is kind of nice. And because it's a spell, it's good for the Jungle Jammer, which is a 4 mana 4/2 weapon. Death Rattle, summon a random 1-cost beast. Cast spells while equipped to improve. So this is not going to summon more than 1 beast, it's just going to increase the cost of the beast that you summon. Kind of need the core set to properly evaluate this one, whether there's some mana cost that's really good to get to. So not going to really go through all the beasts to see what you can get. I guess you can assume the higher number the better, but maybe there's some good ones on 6, for instance, like Shaman. And since the bunch of bananas, 3 spells, 3 1-mana spells in 1 card, the Jungle Jammer might be really easy to infuse to get a very, very big beast, potentially. And the Barrel of Monkeys just might be what you want to be playing just to get that going, because say you go coin Jungle Jammer into 2 monkeys, well suddenly your Jungle Jammer is going to be summoning a 3-cost beast already. It might be pretty good tempo between all that. Also have the Arrowsmith. This is a 2 mana 2/3 Naga. After you cast a spell, deal 1 damage to the lowest health enemy. This is a bit like Cold Core Pack Runner, but a bit worse, I would say. Actually, considerably worse. So Cold Core Pack Runner got nerfed to 3 mana version, but this used to be 2 mana 2/3 with this effect. This is certainly weaker than that was, but that was a very strong card. And this one might be alright. Some Naga synergy. There's a bit of that from Sunken City with this card that might be relevant. But playing this plus a bunch of bananas, it's pretty okay tempo, I'd say. I like this package from Hunter. Some definite potential there, and I think it's a package that you can run in a lot of decks without ruining those other deck synergies. Like I said, like Big Beast Hunter, you could run this in potentially. Run these cards, run the Wild Seed cards, and you could still like run Big Beasts and like, I don't know, have this card as your Big Beast, for instance. And maybe that will work as a deck. Alright guys, that is it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.